सो हामी यहीँबाट कन्टिन्यू गरौँ न त. सो आई थिङ्क हाम्रो कुरा के भइरहेको थियो भन्दाखेरि चाहिँ अ लट अफ टाइम्स मेरो प्रब्लम चाहिँ के भन्दाखेरि चाहिँ इफ बिकज वी कन्ज्युम अ लट अफ कन्टेन्ट होइन, अनि कति कुराहरू थाहा हुन्छ, अनि वाइ सुड आई पे या वाइ सुड आई टेक एन एडिसनल सर्भिस फर समथिङ द्याट आई अलरेडी नो होइन. अनि त्यो पर्सपेक्टिभमा चाहिँ आई थिङ्क अहिलेसम्म त्यो कोच नलिएको, लाइफ कोच नलिएको होइन. अनि मेन्टरको पर्सपेक्टिभमा चाहिँ अब भनौँ न, अभियसली यु हेभ सो मेनी मेन्टर्स इन टर्म्स कि यु गेट टु, अब आई एम फर्चुनेट इनफ बिकज आई थिङ्क आई गेट टु टक विथ लट अफ अमेजिङ पिपल थ्रु दिस पडकास्ट के होइन. अनि त्यो हिसाबबाट पनि आई थिङ्क अहिलेसम्म चाहिँ मैले त्यसरी कोच नलिएको वान अफ माई कारण चाहिँ इट्स अ थिङ कि थाहा छ त होइन किन लिनु पऱ्यो वाला लजिक. तर आई थिङ्क obviously
and generally I wouldn't even recommend a coach if you feel like there's a lot of room for development and आफूले डेभलप गरि पनि रहेछ aggressively. So आफैले एक्सप्लोइट गर्न सक्ने ठाउँ टन्नै छ and you're like very happy with your development, then maybe you don't need a coach at that point होइन. At some point you might get stuck. You might need to be challenged. Generally हामीले के हुन्छ नि, मान्छेहरूले बिहान उठेर they don't ask themselves what is the most extraordinary life I can live होइन, what would make me most alive भनेर सोचे हुँदैन. People are just so busy with their day to day life. त्यो mundane लेभलमै लाइफ हुन्छ कि. So what people sit down with the coach, it's an opportunity to really try and carve out what might be extraordinary beyond the mundane होइन. अब एज फार एज सोचेको कुराहरू चाहिँ एउटा चाहिँ पढेर आएको हुन्छ हामीले, एउटा सोचेको हुन्छ, देयर इज एन इन्टेलेक्चुअल विजडम भन्छ, एउटा चाहिँ सुनेको विजडमहरू हुन्छ. वाट वी वान्ट टु भ्याल्यू मोर, दोज आर गुड स्टार्टिङ पोइन्ट्स, इज हाम्रो जुन रिजल्ट ड्रिभन विजडम, एक्सपिरियन्सियल विजडम विच हेज कन्भर्टेड कि होइन. आई रिड अ बुक, इट्स अ ग्रेट आइडिया, पढेँ, एक्सर्साइज गर्नुपर्ने जस्तो लाग्छ, तर भएन. So how do you sort of bridge that gap? Sometimes idea level may huna sakcha, sometimes say result level ma huna sakcha. So I think that the thing you mentioned about afaile sochne, so you're thinking about at this level also how much of it is converting. My desired idea to conversion rate is what? हामीले एउटा पर्सेन्टेज निकाल्यो भने that should sort of give you an idea होइन. Do I need a coach or not? That's one place. Second is do I have enough ideas to experiment with in the first place? Generally when मैले business coachingहरू गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ what I recommend is a business ought to be experimenting with at least 5 ideas. We give a template called a laboratory. These are the 5 ideas we are experimenting. What is the outcome I want? कहिलेसम्म चाहिँ यसको आउटपुट देखिनुपर्छ, यसको सक्सेस कसरी मेजर गर्ने, एन्ड जब त्यो पिरियड छिद्दिन्छ नि, what do I do next? यसलाई चाहिँ होइन, दिस आइडिया इज अ हरेबल वान, वी ड्रप इट, डज नट वर्क, कि यसलाई लिएर अलिकति ट्विक गऱ्यो भने चाहिँ दिस विल बिकम बेटर, or इट्स अ ह्युज सक्सेस, हामीले यसलाई दोहोऱ्याइ गरिरहनु पऱ्यो भन्ने सम कन्क्लुजन. सो जेनरली अ बिजनेसेस ought to be experimenting with things. One is also, I mean, are there enough things you're experimenting with that's moving you towards where you need to go? That's the second way of looking at it. So ideation level pani huna sakcha, execution level pani huncha, and somewhere in the middle.
Business coach makes sense for me. Obviously, someone like me just go background चाहिँ कहिले पनि business भएन, family wise होइन. So I think business coach definitely makes sense to me. Life coach at times it does not make sense to me. कुन पर्सपेक्टिभबाट भन्दाखेरि चाहिँ this is life. Nobody has figured it out होइन. Why do you need a coach to tell them how to live a life? And that is also coming from another human being होइन. So त्यो कन्टेक्स्टमा चाहिँ at times when I become very critical about the idea of life coach होइन, यस्तो प्रश्नहरू मेरो दिमागमा आउँछ कि.
राइट.
सो हजुरलाई चाहिँ के लाग्छ?
भ्यालिड क्वेसन्स है. So because I do the whole personal coaching, executive coaching, leadership coaching, career coaching, business, sometimes what can happen is, imagine you're running your business, doing really well, hitting your metrics. What if you don't feel satisfied? I know. So we might sort of go back into your personal life and look at what are your values. What for you represents a fulfilled life. So we might have to go into that and then redraw a picture of your life in terms of like what would be the behaviors that lead you to living your values more, which may be outside of business. It could just be things like creativity. Maybe your business does not give you that room. I know your business looks like it gives you a lot of room to be creative.
Yes.
But let's assume somebody does not experience that. And usko life ma chahi the desire is that for him to be more happy, he has to somewhere be able to be creative. So then he has to sort of plot outside of his work life, where does that creativity come from? So the ultimate idea is that overall life satisfaction is maintained. I know that one case. For some people, it can be the balance. Too much business and other areas are like going down south. So त्यतातिर ध्यान दिनुपर्ने हुन्छ. So how do we sort of recover in that area?
I think फेरि उहाँलाई pause गर्नु भन्नु पर्यो. ठिक छ? So sorry.
No worries.
Okay, please.
So other areas ma चाहिँ कसरी, how do you sort of restore it? That can be one. For some people, they just can't stop thinking about work. So, I've had people tell me, off button, nahi bhayena ki. So, it can be those kind of things. For some people, it can be like, the health is going down. So it could be a lot of other areas of life that generally at some point starts to disrupt work itself. So that's one way. One way to look at how you probably have to look outside of work and see what's going on.
This is because they onboarded you for a business coaching, for helping them to go beyond where they are right now.
Yeah,
from business side.
Yeah, so generally what happens is we have an agreement. So each coaching sessions that we move, generally we have few levels of agreement. एउटा level of agreement चाहिँ के हुन्छ भने हरेक सेसनमा के कोचिङ गर्ने भन्ने हुन्छ हैन. एउटा चाहिँ कस्तो हुन्छ भने we have a literal written document. That's the second. Third is in the long term, like let's say in the 6 months, 1 year, what are the outcomes they want? भनेर हामीले त्यो written agreement may we put those outcomes.
Okay.
So if the person says, I need to मेरो business side but I need to leverage अलिक गर्नुपर्छ, मेरो vision हरू अलिक clear छैन, we probably need some business dashboard हरू बनाउनु पर्ने हुन सक्छ. So on the business side that is there, but there might be like there are other areas of life that I need to work on. It's ABC. And so probably at the end of the 1 year when our agreement is done, यो एरियाहरूलाई पनि सुन्नुपर्ने हुन्छ भनेर they'll put it. And then हाम्रो each sessionमा चाहिँ we'll sort of or each monthमा we'll sort of have a game plan. यो कसरी, which one do you want to tackle first?
So सुरुमा नै exit strategy plan हुन्छ. So for example, this collaboration is for 9 months.
Yeah.
9 monthsमा चाहिँ यो आउनुपर्छ भनेर.
Yeah, absolutely. So त्यो agreementमा हुन्छ. Now what happens is people can choose to extend it. Or otherwise it ends right there. Typically very strict, अलि more strictly हुने चाहिँ organizationsहरूमा हुन्छ. So generally, the HR will have a budget. एउटा budget हुन्छ हैन, अनि उनीहरूको approval chainहरूबाट लिनुपर्ने हुन्छ. So it has to have a more finite terms. It'll be like, okay, for 3 months, 6 months, this particular executive leader will work on improving engagement of his team members with his team members and improving his leadership presence. भनेर त्यो agreement मै आउँछ. अनि त्यो 6 महिनामा that thing ends. सिद्धियो. And we might choose a new topic or we might sort of do a debrief and say, what comes next for the leader. Generally के हुन्छ भने कोचिङहरु गर्दा organizational contextमा इश्यूजहरु एक्लै आउँदैन. पुरै परिवारसँग आउँछ कि हैन, जस्तो अब दाजुभाइ भाइ आमा बुवा छोरा छोरी सबै आउँछ. So जस्तो if a person has issues with maybe engagement, they could be एउटा leadership presence को issue हुन सक्छ. They could be the ability to communicate to a group हुन सक्छ. They could be how they manage their high performing teams को issues हरु आउन सक्छ. They could be and so on and so forth. त्यो 4-5 वटा इश्यू 5-6 वटा इश्यूजहरु generally देखा पर्छ कि they are very closely linked with each other. हैन, generally 1 or 2 गर्यो भने they would be others. So somebody if they're doing a career coaching गर्यो भने they first need to develop a career plan. The link to that is things like personal branding. Plan मात्रै भएन,
execute गर्नु पर्यो.
So they might, if they don't have enough brand and visibility, they might have difficulty being heard and being seen in the right places. They might also need a little bit of coaching around networks. If the networks are weak, building a little bit of that networking side of things. So it's the family just related bhayera आउँछ कि. So it's a question of how many of those issues do we catch in the contract. एउटामा गर्ने हो कि दुईटामा गर्ने हो कि जब कन्ट्र्याक्ट पिरियड छिद्दिन्छ डु वान्ट टु एड अ फ्यु मोर अर समटाइम्स इफ डिपेन्डिङ अन द बजेट पिपल ह्याभ इट एन्ड्स राइट देयर राइट
इभल्भ पनि हुन्छ होला किन फर्स्ट टाइम अनबोर्ड गर्दा त मेबी दे डोन्ट हेभ एनी आइडिया अबाउट what they want पनि हुन्छ होला नि त
Yeah, absolutely. And initially, that's one reason why people come in. So clarity is, in terms of the vision, is one of the points of starting. So if that is very developed, त्यो भयो भने चाहिँ हामी then we'll move into the execution side of things. होइन बिचमा के आउँछ sometimes कहिलेकाहीँ knowledge gap हुन्छ कहिलेकाहीँ चाहिँ experience gap हुन्छ. So we try to determine what is the gap for them to get the outcome. होइन अनि they start acting on that and then our goal is we sort of define a timeline कहिलेसम्म के result आइसक्नु पर्ने हो and then the coaching would revolve around any and everything जे गर्नुपर्ने हो त्यो outcome निक्लिनलाई होइन. Eventually what we are thinking is if I'm having a discussion with you एउटा विषयमा अहिले 9 months down the road we have an agreement 9 months down the road agreement extend भयो भने we have a different conversation कि त्यही विषयमा चाहिँ you sort of hopefully made progress in that. Progress भएन भने 2-4 हप्ता 1 महिनामै देखिहाल्छ and why the progress is not happening becomes the other area of coaching because some other things pop up and maybe those are the things that are the elephant in the room that needs to be addressed prior to त्यो हुने and which may be a blind area for the client.
And I think त्यो त अब हजुरको पनि च्यालेन्ज भयो नि त हजुरकै च्यालेन्ज हो मोस्ट प्रोबेबली होइन किन भन्दाखेरि चाहिँ यस्तो वान अन वानमा त हजुरले लास्ट टाइम मलाई के भन्नुभएको थियो भन्दाखेरि मोस्ट अफ माई बिजनेस कम फ्रम रिफरल्स होइन विच मिन्स यु हेभ वर्क रियली हार्ड अपन लट अफ people that you have onboarded. Let's not call them clients, let's call them partners. होइन भन्दाखेरि यो लेभलसम्म इङ्गेजमेन्ट हुँदाखेरि चाहिँ यो क्लाइन्टको रिलेसनसिप भन्दा पनि बियोन्ड जाने हो नि त होइन. सो त्यो कन्टेक्समा चाहिँ हजुरको एन्डमा यो होल प्रोसेसमा जेनरली इफ यु हेभ टु एभरेज आउट लट अफ हार्ड वर्क्स द्याट यु गो इन्टु कस्तो कस्तो हार्डवर्क्सहरू या हार्डवर्क भन्ने कि फ्रेमवर्क भन्ने कि होइन यु गो थ्रु वेन एभर यु अनबोर्ड अ न्यू इन्डिभिजुअल.
So initially the work is not so much in the initial level. Initial level चाहिँ just yesterday night I just had a conversation with a new client. होइन हिजो बेलुका राति नै भयो होइन I was on a Zoom call. त्यसमा चाहिँ is more to figure out like what the person is trying to accomplish, what are their goals, and where they want to go, or how coaching could benefit them भन्ने खालको कुरा हुन्छ. So initially not much work, it's straightforward like for an experienced coach के सोच्नु पनि पर्दैन. It's like part of your makeup भित्रै भइसक्यो हुन्छ like going through that. Later on चाहिँ कस्तो काम आउँछ भने you're trying to look at the patterns like in the last 3 months what is starting to show up for this person. हामीले कस्तो खालको repetitive are they making like same kind of things are showing up like or behavior मा यो गर्छु भन्ने तर फेरि गर्न गाह्रो हुने त्यो रिपिटेडली आइरहने त्यस्तो कुराहरू or are there specific structures that this person needs or frameworks that would accelerate their development. त्यो लेभलबाट सोचेर काम गर्नुपर्ने हुन्छ. Sometimes initially they may need a structure right off but sometimes we sort of let the conversation evolve. साँच्चै चाहियो भने मात्रै युज गर्ने हो नत्र भए त लाइक I always try to push the client to just do it without any structures.
त्यो भन्छ नि एउटा राइट मेन्टरले गर्न सक्ने दामी काम भनेको चाहिँ यु आस्क राइट क्वेसन्स
राइट
होइन यु मेक देम द अदर गाई थिङ्क. सो आई थिङ्क लेट्स नट अज्युम हजुरको प्रोसेसमा चाहिँ अ लट अफ थिङ इज अबाउट आस्किङ राइट क्वेसन्स.
It's a starting point. होइन राइट क्वेसन सोध्यो भन्दैमा हुन्छ भन्ने हुँदैन. So you could ask all the right questions and they won't do anything. Right. So then you sort of have to then alikati it's about pivoting also where you think a pivot is necessary. So at that point then the nature of questions might change or sometimes you're observing patterns and you might reflect the pattern. So instead of asking I might actually challenge them. Is this goal really important? I've seen that 2-3 mahina bhaisakyo you wanted to do this. I don't see this happening. Is this in your top 3 goals in your life or not? होइन generally my framework is if something is not in your top 3 goals in life why are we wasting time on it. होइन किनभने त्यो मोटिभेसन हुँदैन रिसोर्सेस एलोकेट गर्ने टेन्डेन्सी हुँदैन. If people do not prioritize it then it's not going to achieve it. So sometimes from an asking mode coach may have to shift to a challenging mode stating observations, really, like poking people sometimes in the right places if they are up for it.
So you end up offending a lot of your partner's clients
Yeah, I mean, at that point, it's no longer offensive.
because you have warned them already. I might get offensive in.
Yeah, so in a sense, you already have permission to challenge them.
True. And it seems really a difficult task. How do you show a client कि whatever resources, money, time that you have invested between us has brought in something in your life? So how do you make them realize? Until and unless the other person make the changes in his behavior, nothing is going to happen.
Right.
होइन उसको माइन्डसेटमा त चेन्ज गर्ने त होइन माइन्डसेट चेन्ज गरेर के गर्ने यदि त्यो एक्जिक्युटमा गएन भने सो अलिकति च्यालेन्जिङ भयो नि त होइन बिकज त अगाडिको मान्छे कि क्लाइन्ट लिँदाखेरि नै यु आर भेरी पेकुलर अबाउट वाट काइन्ड अफ क्लाइन्ट्स यु टेक एन्ड वाट काइन्ड अफ क्लाइन्ट्स यु डोन्ट टेक डु यु हेभ यर ओन फिल्टरेसन प्रोसेस
So one of the things is कस्तो हुन्छ नि outcome is what they say is the outcome they want. कहिले the outcome could just be clarity. मलाई बिजनेसको भिजन मिसनहरू मात्रै बनाउनु पर्यो भ्याल्युज बनाउनु पर्यो if you have a clear vision for them that's success. We did not contract with them for execution. होइन कसैसँग चाहिँ एउटा वान डेको फेसिलिटेसनमा वी जस्ट एउटा भिजन मिसनहरू बनाउने द्याट्स एन्ड इट एन्ड्स सो द्याट्स सक्सेस राइट देयर होइन सो हाउ डु वी मेजर इट एट दि एन्ड आई युजली आस्क देम उनीहरूलाई भने हुन्छ लाइक हामीले जब यो सिद्धिन्छ हाउ वुड यु नो विभ सक्सिडेड अर नट भन्ने कुरा चाहिँ अब उनीहरूले चाहिँ मैले एउटा क्लियर भिजन देखेँ भने चाहिँ लाइक हाउ आई वान्ट माई बिजनेस टु बी इन 5 years भन्ने चाहिँ द्याट सक्सेस भनेर डिफाइन भएपछि एट दि एन्ड यु आस्क देम हेभ यु अकम्प्लिस्ड where you need to be and they are like yes so that concludes it sometimes it's about changing beliefs they have limiting beliefs sometimes it's about being clear on what are the maybe resources to between a vision and an execution all the things in between ko clarity build garnu parne huna sakcha so once we do that it's done and sometimes it's about results sometimes it's all of it. So generally हाम्रो इनिसियल पोइन्टमा नै वी डु आस्क लाइक हाउ वुड वी मेजर सक्सेस भनेर एउटा क्ल्यारिटी चाहिँ बिल्ड गरेको हुन्छ सो पछि गएर चाहिँ वी मेजर इट अगेन्स्ट द्याट
अनि यो जुन क्ल्यारिटी भन्दा पनि जसलाई चाहिँ एक्जिक्युसनमै हुन्छ त्यो केसमा चाहिँ
सो इन द्याट केस वाट एभर इज द आउटकम दे वान्ट सो समटाइम्स इफ इट्स जस्तो आई निड टु गेट बेटर एट लेभरेजिङ भन्यो होइन एन्ड उसको टिम लेभरेज भयो द बिजनेस इज बेटर लेभरेज देन देव एक्जिक्युटेड अन वाट दे वान्टेड टु डु होइन सो वी माइट आस्क लाइक वाट वुड अ बेटर लेभरेज लुक लाइक फर यु एन्ड दिल बी लाइक म यस्तो यस्तो भयो त्यति भयो यो सब भयो भने चाहिँ देन एट दि एन्ड वी इन द मिडल वी डु अ चेक इन आर वी मुभिङ इन द राइट डाइरेक्सन अनि एट द एन्ड वी आर लाइक हेभ वी अराइभड वे वी निड टु अराइभ नत्र भए चाहिँ बिचमा किन सोधिरहन्छ भने समटाइम्स कोर्स करेक्सन पनि गर्नुपर्ने हुन्छ होइन थिङ्स अलिकति लेफ्ट अलिकति राइट जानुपर्ने हुन्छ सो एन्ड देन वी अराइभ इट समटाइम्स इट्स somebody says I don't want to I'm not exercising they start exercising execution भइहाल्यो so some things are very obvious other things is we always ask the question of how do we measure success so we always try to break it down into something measurable and so that we have a way to check and see whether they've succeeded or not and sometimes के हुन्छ नि people are success भए पनि because they did not set a metrics of success भएको पनि थाहा नहुनसक्छ कि
सो आई थिङ्क भन्छ हजुरको उसमा चाहिँ द मोस्ट इम्पोर्टेन्ट पार्ट वुड बी आइडेन्टिफाइङ मेट्रिक्स नै भयो है किन भन्दाखेरि हजुरलाई पनि क्लाइन्टकोलाई पनि
या एन्ड द्याट्स इनिसियली चाहिँ वी वान्ट टु फर्स्ट मेजर दि अचिभमेन्ट गोल्स रफली होइन एन्ड देन लेटर वी ट्रिकल इट डाउन टु द मेट्रिक्स
यो बिहेभियरल चेन्ज चाहिँ कसरी जस्तै कतिपय कन्टेक्समा त हजुरले चाहिँ इफ समबडी कम्स विथ यु कि आई वान्ट टु लुज वेट
राइट
भनेर नि त्यो त बिहेभियरल चेन्ज नै हुनु पऱ्यो नि त होइन सो बिहेभियरल चेन्ज लिएर आउने फर्स्ट वान अफ द फ्यु टेक्निक्स चाहिँ हजुरको के हो
सो बिहेभियरल चेन्ज अर्गनाइजेसनल लेभलमा र पर्सनल लेभलमा अलिक फरक हुन्छ सो अर्गनाइजेसनल लेभलमा समबडी क्यान से द्याट मेरो मिटिङमा पिपल इन माई टिम डोन्ट रेस्पोन्ड द्याट वेल होइन मैले जति पार्टिसिपेसन खोजेको त्यति पार्टिसिपेसन हुँदैन होइन So what I would like is possibly to be able to help other people participate in my meeting better. So that's an example of like, so what we would do is, and so I might say, hey, can I observe your meeting? एकचोटि आएर मिटिङमा observe गरौँ भनेर भन्छ. And so what can be, may not be obvious to the person is that he's very domineering, एकदम अलिकति हुन्छ नि एज अ ओनर भएर अलिकति अलि लाइक हुन्छ नि सबैजना डराउने खालको इन्भाइरोमेन्ट भयो भने सो पिपल आर टु स्केयर टु स्पिक भने द्याट मे नट बी अभियस टु हिम एन्ड अदर पिपल आर टु स्केयर टु गिभ हिम द्याट फिडब्याक किन फिडब्याक मात्रै दिने होइन त्यसपछि के गर्ने भन्ने पनि हुन्छ होइन. सो देन आफ्टर द्याट वी माइट अब्जर्भ ओके दिज आर द थिङ्स आइ एम अब्जर्भिङ and this seems to be why people are not engaging and participating. So what could be some behaviors we can implement so that people are more free to speak? So I mean, literally what we have is behavioral coaching side ma we want behavior to have altered for at least 3 months.
भनेको
3 महिनासम्म चाहिँ नयाँ बिहेभियर प्र्याक्टिस गरिसक्या हुनु पर्यो
to last
to say that we have achieved some sort of a change.
Okay.
होइन. So what we might adopt is few other people on the team that the person is comfortable with. And हामीले एक्चुअली एउटा रेटिङको सिटै छ क्या मसँग where we have them rate it. उसको बिहेभियर ओभर अ पिरियड अफ टाइम वी ट्र्याक इट.
यहाँ त दुइटैको बिहेभियर रेट गर्नु पऱ्यो नि त नट जस्तै फर अघिको इक्जाम्पलमा अघिको त्यो मिटिङवाला कुरामा चाहिँ इभन अ लिडर हु इज होल्डिङ अ मिटिङ एन्ड अल्सो द team players who are attending a meeting होइन सो त्यो त यहाँ त
right. Initially we will start with the leader because it seems in this case the criteria is a little bit like the leader ko attitude is causing the problem होइन. Part 1 मा चाहिँ once we've sort of gotten that down a measurable level मा चाहिँ once he's made those changes अनि अलिक किसिमको त्यो थर्काउने किसिमले नआउन थालेपछि then we'll measure it like periodically we'll change how much of it has stayed. Second चाहिँ यसमा sometimes you require a little bit of a facilitation skills पनि चाहिन्छ. So they maybe need to be coached a little bit on 10 जना छ भने how to get other people to engaged. So a little bit of combination of that side भइसकेको छैन भने है. So generally first partबाटै you start to see noticeable difference and other people would be much more participatory. त्यस्तो केसमा चाहिँ
यो बिजनेस साइडमा भयो होइन अहिले हामी यो क्वेसन चाहिँ बिहेभियरल चेन्जको पर्सपेक्टिभमा थियो. पर्सनल साइडमा चाहिँ
सो पर्सनल साइडमा सो लेट्स अज्युम एक्सर्साइजको गर्नु पऱ्यो भने चाहिँ माई फर्स्ट इन्ट्रेस्ट इज दिस अ टप 3 गोल अफ योर्स अर नट.
ओके
होइन आर यु रियली विलिङ टु प्ले कि यो गफ मात्रै हो होइन. बिकज लाइक धेरै मान्छेहरूको चाहिँ मलाई यो पनि गर्नु मन लाग्यो त्यो पनि गर्नु मन लाग्यो भन्ने हुन्छ बट इट्स लाइक नम्बर 7 or 8 अन देयर प्रायोरिटी लिस्ट होइन. आर यु एक्चुली विलिङ टु कमिट रिसोर्सेस? Are you willing to spend time? Are you willing to do whatever it takes? होइन. If they don't seem त्यो high level ती आएन भने चाहिँ then again I challenge them. I mean like why is this a goal of yours? Shall we drop it and choose something that's really in your top 3? होइन. So initial level मा नै if the commitment is not strong then I think the rest of it would not work.
अनि यो मेजर प्रब्लम नै प्रायोरिटी सेट गर्ने पनि त हो नि होइन र धेरै मान्छेलाई चाहिँ 1 2 3 सेट गर्नै गाह्रो छ नि त.
Yeah, so generally there are several exercises we do in the beginning to sort of take a bird-eyes view on their overall life and see which areas of their life they want to really focus on. What would be the top number 1 to 3? I really have them literally prioritize it, and then maybe we start off with number 1 and go there because एउटा bandwidth को कुरा पनि आउँछ. There are like 7-8 major areas of your life. It's a little difficult to focus on all of it at once. Right? Where are you willing? Generally, the framework is which area of your life do you need to focus on to see the biggest difference in your life. So त्यो पर्सपेक्टिभबाट आउन सकिन्छ. So any personal behavior, I want to know if they're really serious about it or not. And that's where I'll sort of सुरुमै I'll press them to see if they're genuinely motivated or not.
यस्तो इन्स्टेन्सेस भएको छ जहाँ चाहिँ यु हेभ गिभन अप अ क्लाइन्ट बिकज त्यो एक्जिक्युसनमा गएकै छैन अनि यु आर वेस्टिङ यो टाइम दे टाइम मनी त्यस्तो भएको छ इन्स्टेन्सेस.
सो वाट क्यान ह्यापन इज समटाइम्स पिपल चुज गोल्स एन्ड वी च्यालेन्ज देम एन्ड देव चेन्ज द गोल्स.
ओके
होइन बिकज लाइक आफ्टर 2-3 months if they're not going it they're like what has happened is people like come to think of it त्यो खासै इम्पोर्टेन्ट त होइन. अन्त त्यो 2-3 महिना भएपछि थाहा हुन्छ कि when you know like they're not like mobilizing things to really address that area. अरू एरियामा चाहिँ फेरि गरिरहेछ होइन. they're not there त्यो गोल चाहिँ अलि just sounded like a really good goal. Some goals sound really good, nice to have, but it's not like part of their need to have goals. Right? So that's there. Sometimes I think what can happen is sometimes people are better off in therapy than in coaching. Right? Generally के हुन्छ नि, if people are having a depression, they can't get out of bed, they come to coaching, त्यो एक्सन्सहरू जुन कमिट गरेको हुन्छ उनीहरूलाई गर्नै गाह्रो हुन्छ. So once or twice that has happened. And so what, and then they benefit by going to a therapist more. And once they are like, more back to really normal life ma aisikeपछि, then a coach is more useful.
How do you differentiate between a therapist and a coach?
So a therapist चाहिँ, so coach only works on the present and the future. होइन? हामीले चाहिँ coach can go into the past पनि जान्छ. तर coachमा चाहिँ अब जस्तो let's assume you're about to do a presentation and I might ask Anupji, like when was the last time you felt really, really confident doing a presentation? So तपाईँले भन्नु होला 7 वर्ष पहिला, there was this time. So that's, we're going to a resourceful past. It's not like traumatic. So एउटा traumatic past मा जाने भनेको is the space of a therapist. Coach generally does not go into the past trauma and depression or त्यस्तोमा चाहिँ जाँदैन. We are more like present and future oriented. So that's usually a difference, like a key difference.
तर हजुर त थेरापिस्ट पनि हो नि हैन?
No, I'm not a therapist. I've just dabbled in few. I've done courses and done just out of curiosity, but I've never like pursued that line of as a professional.
मेरो I think the one of the first question I remember हजुरसँग last time कफीमा भेट्दाखेरि चाहिँ मैले एउटा offensive question सोधेको थिएँ हैन, that is मेरो लागि चाहिँ you can only mentor or help people you have been there done that हैन. अनि कोचको पर्सपेक्टिभमा त you might have done things but then let's say एउटा कुनै like 100 करोड कम्पनी चलाइरहेको मान्छेलाई चाहिँ कोच गर्न पर्यो हैन, but then you have never been there done that to the बिजनेस साइजमा भयो. maybe somebody have lost को त्यो थेरापीतिर गएर maybe somebody के एउटा युनिक युज केस होला हैन. सो त्यो क्वेसनको एन्सर वाज भेरी इन्ट्रेस्टिङ एन्ड एज अफ आई वुड लाइक टु रिपिट द सेम क्वेसन हैन. आई थिङ्क म लगायत धेरै मान्छेलाई चाहिँ के हुनसक्छ भन्दाखेरि चाहिँ कोचको पर्सपेक्टिभमा चाहिँ इफ यु हेभ बिन देयर डन द्याट ओन्ली देन यु क्यान हेल्प द अदर पर्सन हैन. इफ नट इट जस्ट युर मेन्टल हाइपोथेसिस कि मेबी यो केस होला, यसलाई चाहिँ यस्तो गर्न पर्छ होला भनेर हुन्छ होला. सो हेल्प मी अन्डरस्ट्यान्ड बिट्विन हेल्पिङ समबडी बेस्ड अन द हाइपोथेसिस or the idea कि केही कुरा हेल्प गर्नको लागि चाहिँ यु त्यो भित्र छिरेर त्यो कुरा गरेको हुनु पर्यो. यो अन्डरस्ट्यान्डिङमा हेल्प मी टु क्लियर थिङ्स आउट.
राइट. एन्ड सो जेनरली अब कस्तो हुन्छ भने वान इज एउटा मेन्टरको पर्सपेक्टिभ लिउँ है पहिला. सो मेन्टर इज जेनरली हाम्रो ग्रिक मिथहरूबाट आएको हो. सो अ पर्सन वाज गोइङ अन अ ट्रिप, उसको साथीको नाम चाहिँ मेन्टर थियो अनि उसको छोरा थियो होइन. अनि उसको साथी मेन्टरलाई के भन्छ नि, तिमीलाई जे थाहा छ सबै मेरो छोरालाई सिकाऊ भनेर भन्छ होइन. सो मेन्टरले चाहिँ उसको साथीलाई सिकाउँछ. जेनरली वी हेभ हाम्रो मेन्टरको पर्सपेक्टिभ चाहिँ इज समबडी द्याट सिनियर द्याट हेज मोर एक्सपिरियन्स इज सेयरिङ द विजडम वेदर इट्स इन द एउटा कर्पोरेट सेटिङमा अर लाइफमा है. देन वी हेभ लाइक लेट्स से अ फुटबल कोच or some other coach which is actually teaching the technical side of things also. So they grow from that area. But one thing that we do have to keep in mind is just because somebody has become successful doesn't mean they can actually be good at imparting. So football ke example, Maradona was a coach but he's not a global like a really top coach. I know. So there have been a lot of instances where footballers were really good players but they were not good coach. So the ability to help other people lift their game is a different skill set than being good in something. So you can have somebody who's really good. Some people are like really naturally gifted in something. I know. So it could be sports or social skills, and like teach me. The person does not know what to teach you. I'll just be like, hey, आफै गर्ने त हो नि, naturally हो भनेर भनिदिन्छ हैन. That's not useful for a person who is trying to develop the skills and does not naturally have it. What we need is to be able to break it down in a way that is transferable. We want the skills to be transferable हुनु पर्यो हैन. So generally अब business sense मा हेर्दाखेरि चाहिँ what is required is you need to have enough understanding of businesses in general, enough understanding of terminologies, but I don't think you need to experience every success that is possible in a business to coach people beyond success, right? What is necessary is, I think, tried and tested framework. So that's typically like, what someone like me would get it as a part of their certifications from being an executive coach or business coach. There are certain frameworks that have proven to work across, decades, across multiple countries. So what we have are frameworks that revolve around a particular problem, right? Sometimes you don't necessarily need to get there. Sometimes it can be, just coaching is a separate skill in itself. त्यो नै एउटा स्किल हो कि हैन नत्र भए चाहिँ गरिसकेका मान्छेले पनि the thing is they might impart their vision यसरी गर भन्ने but you as a business owner may not necessarily like want exactly that thing to do. You have your own idea. And मलाई मेरो business त यसरी गर्न भन्ने हुनुहुन्छ. So part of that coaching skill is being able to take out exactly what is it that you want. What is your unique vision for the business and the execution? As far as, specific problems, we have frameworks around problems, whether it's the leverage side, whether it's the tactic side, whether it's the marketing strategy side, whether it's the overall strategy side, high-performing teams. So there are structures with all the, major problems that a business would face. We have structures and we bring in tried and tested frameworks into the equation. And the results usually speak for themselves, right?
True. How you have answered me.
Okay.
How expensive are you?
Well, I mean, so यस्तो हुन्छ generally, coaching भनेको नेपालमा is very new, right? So generally, what I do is I do tiered pricing. Generally, if I work with somebody abroad, they'll be like, उतातिरको pricing हुन्छ नेपालमा. So generally, I try to make it affordable. I work with people, I sort of do want people to actually get coaching because I do really believe in it, so we work around it.
Obviously, with different clients, with the different requirements, the pricing differs.
Yeah. So it depends on the scope also, the duration, whether it's individuals versus teams or काम गर्ने हो. So all the scope, how much interaction is required, the length of the interaction, the nature of the interaction, the accessibility, all of that counts. It's like anything, like, whether you're like a lawyer or anything else, so the size and scope of the agreement basically defines the money. So generally, if person says, how many you charge, well, I would say, it defines on like the scope of our work, what we agree to. So sometimes it's a more complex, like larger organization, it's combination of individual coaching huncha, group facilitations huncha. So you can agree on that right up front. Would be real different from just saying I'm going to coach just one person for 3 months. So generally, minimum time that a coach would work for somebody is, for a lot of coaches, it's 6 months at least they work, 2 to 3 times a month. Sometimes even 3 months. It could just be one like very narrow issue, like coming up with a career plan, or just एउटा issue लाई लिएर they just want to work on it. That's it.
And coaching regardless of age. So for example, a career plan could be something for 17, 18 को लागि, executive might be of like 40, 45, 50 को लागि, So a personal life को त I think त्यो हुनै भएन होला.
Yeah, absolutely. Depends. Just so beginning it's like starting a career huncha. Midlife it can be developing a career. Towards the end of the life, it can be career transition pani huna sakcha. So all would have little different perspectives, and they would come in with their own experience. Generally, about coaching bhaneko चाहिँ to some extent it's as you mentioned, it's a partnership. A coach is not necessarily coming in as an expert the way a mentor does, or a way a consultant does, or a way even a trainer does. Those are coming in like, I'm an expert. A coach would generally come in, you're already the industry expert. And if you need more industry expertise, you can always hire a technical expert. It's not typically the industry expertise that's stopping the person. It's everything else. Right? So it's about organization, it's about being disciplined, it's about like having good frameworks, it's about like putting that structure, it's about executing, whatever else it is. Most people already have the expertise. And so generally, you're not hiring an organizational coach for the expertise.
True. How difficult is it to make people understand the need of coaching in Nepal?
So in Nepal, I think coaching चाहिँ हाम्रो literally marketing को एउटा MBA को textbook झिक्यो भने चाहिँ there's a term called latent demand. Latent demand भनेको चाहिँ त्यो भित्र चाहिँ एउटा डिमान्ड हुने तर हतपति बाहिर नदेखिने हुन्छ नि, हैन? So part of the stage that Nepal is in, like a lot of people have latent demand. So once they understand that coaching भन्ने चिज यस्तो रहेछ, यस्तो available पनि हुँदो रहेछ, मान्छे yeah, this could be something I need भन्ने जस्तो आउन थाल्छ के. Once people become aware that such services are available and they've sort of sampled it for a while, then so that's the phase that Nepal is. Generally, most of my clients have never had coaches before. Some have had. So that just sort of tells you how that latency converts into like a actual demand. So that's basically Nepalमा चाहिँ त्यस्तै छ अहिले.
I think नेपालमा चाहिँ अब want भन्दा पनि एउटा हुन्छ नि जस्तै good to have अनि need to have type को के.
Yeah, so generally, I mean, once people start to achieve results, then it becomes more like need to have जस्तोमा जान थाल्छ कि हैन. So generally, it depends on why you're hiring coaches. I know some coaches, and some clients hire coaches because they have like someone to talk to, right?
Therapist was it?
It's like somewhere in between type, but generally, for me, the idea is, there is the possibility of an extraordinary life. Are you ready to play the biggest game of your life or not? And how much can we accelerate it, compress your timelines? 10 वर्ष लाग्ने चिज 2 वर्षमै सिद्धिन्छ भने किन 10 वर्ष लाएर बिस्तारै घुम्दै गरेर नि, you can move on to new things, हैन?
True.
So what is the level of intensity you want to bring to achieving what you want to accomplish? Whether it's clarity build गर्ने हो कि moving towards execution, whatever is your roadblocks.
हजुरले अघि भन्नु चाहिँ you have your own coaches हैन. हजुरले कोच लिँदाखेरि चाहिँ I don't know त्यो शेयर गर्न मिल्दैन कुन पर्सपेक्टिभमा कोच लिनुहुन्छ? Because as a coach yourself, हजुरले लिने कोचिङ चाहिँ कस्तो हो?
So अब part of मेरो certificationsहरुमा चाहिँ I have like a good network of professional coaches. We sort of exchange our professional services. We have like networks, a lot of online platforms we are connected around the world. So over a period of time, you get a sense of people. We sort of send out email like for coaching or lagi. I look for a person that is really not afraid to challenge me. Right? I don't want a coach to be very nice to me. A coach is not my friend. I already have enough friends. Coach is not my family member. I have enough of those. It's not part of my social network. Right? So I look for somebody that can see patterns that may not be obvious to me or is obvious to me, but I want to act on it. And if you have enough self-awareness, you can see that, okay, there's this thing that's stopping me. But, human beings being human beings, we tend to sit on it, right? So I want a coach to call me out on it and say, like, listen, what's going on here? You're not being consistent with what you're saying. So change can come from a lot of places, can come from yourself, can come from like an external source. So the idea is to use, my idea is to use my coach as a catalyst to sometimes help me cut through the BS and just get to achieving whatever needs to be achieved very quickly, right?
So you're saying, is it something regular on your end? It's something whenever you need it type of
No, I use it regularly.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a periodic thing. Sometimes it can be twice a month. Sometimes it can be thrice a month. Coaches are also sometimes accessible whenever you need it.
Okay.
So sometimes if a client needs to call me like for a 10-minute call, I'm available. Like in between sessions.
Random.
Yeah, random. Given I'm not like, let's say, for instance, in the middle of a podcast or something, right? But whenever I'm free, sometimes they just text me, you have time for a quick call. Sometimes they may need situational coaching. So they're just about to jump into a critical meeting that they didn't anticipate. They just need to be in the right mindset. And so you can just sort of quickly sort of coach them into what would make the meeting more successful.
Okay. And is it built later? Is it all pre-built?
Well, I mean, generally, these couple of these are already included in the contract. So generally, I try to not think in terms of time when it comes to billing. I tend to think more in terms of outcome. So we are more focused on achieving outcomes.
So people are investing for the outcomes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Right.
So what is the most challenging part of your business here, your whole career, Mazai? The most challenging part?
So sometimes what happens in organizational coaching is as a part of coaching quite a lot of people, maybe the head of the organization, HR, they want certain people to be coached. And you've already contracted to coach them, but maybe they're not the most coachable people, right? And typically, I would have caught them if it was a one-on-one, thing up front. But generally, what happens is organizations are paying for it. They want people to develop. It's difficult for them to say no, but maybe their heart is not into it fully. So in that situation, what you're having to do is you're sort of having to make the best of the situation. I'm generally looking for people generally, who would hire me on their own, who are like ready to play all out, who are really, really into it. So
And that's the kind of project you enjoy more.
yeah. Typically tend to be business owners because they're paying out of their pocket. Sometimes one way to know how interested somebody is, like, whether they're paying out of their pocket or not. All right. How much of their personal skin is in the game. होइन त्यो भएपछि चाहिँ अलिकति थाहा हुन्छ when organizations are paying कहिलेकाहीँ त्यो link break हुन्छ कि
Granted.
yeah, some people are very interested, some are sort of interested, but once they realize यसले त मलाई साँच्चै हेल्प गर्न सक्दो रहेछ, they become very interested. होइन they have not experienced it. And then some people are more like we just we work through it, but it's more about completing the duration.
Okay. You as a coach, I think the most primary thing is to help somebody else succeed.
Yeah.
Ani just for example, when I look at myself, the thing that I'm doing is out of passion, and I'm trying to monetize my passion. Is it something after backtrack karda phase? Is it something that was already there with you, trying to help somebody, trying to help someone succeed? So,
yeah, absolutely. So generally helping people succeed is at three levels. One is at an individual level, one is at a team level, and one as an organizational level. So I tackle all three of those. Actually, this is something sort of I always wanted to do, but coaching is the structure behind a desire. Yeah, I mean, just wanting to do something is not enough. You sort of have to have clear metrics, frameworks, and a structure to building it. So generally, all the certifications, coaching is around that. But I think it's part of who I am. So I do my own strengths finder assessment. I am generally somebody that likes to learn, somebody that is what's called a developer, likes to take something that's good and make it better. Somebody that's very forward-oriented, future-oriented, somebody that enjoys that interaction. So all the things that makes for a good coach, right? So generally, some of these things, it's sort of part of what you're looking to express. And sort of coaching is the profession that allows what I would have liked to do anyways. It's a very new profession, by the way, coaching.
Nepalma.
Even globally. Certifications are international certifications or certifying body or ne aako चाहिँ 20-25 वर्ष मात्रै भएको छ.
And who are these people certifying? I mean, like,
so just like accounting, law has their own chartered bodies haru huncha. So the most popular one in coaching, the biggest one, is called the International Coach Federation. So they are based out of the US. And so you have to go to coaching schools, and you have to pass oral exams, you have to pass written exams, you have to complete it X amount of hours, out of which certain amount has to be paid, certain amount can only be complimentary. So generally 75% of those has to be paid. You have to add page. So they certify you for experience also. Just like a chartered financial analyst does, or like a lawyer or an accountant, or they need to have worked a certain number of years, 3 years, 4 years before. So they certify you for experience also. It's not just like passing academic exams.
हजुरले चाहिँ टाइम वेस्ट चाहिँ कति इन्भेस्ट गर्नुभएको छ यो डिग्री, यो सर्टिफिकेसन लिनलाई?
So it's been like several years actually, and it's ongoing. It never stops.
So you're still in the process of getting more certificates?
Yeah, it'll always, it's forever. Because the whole scope of things are so complicated that you can always learn more and more and more and more. So when we're talking about helping individuals, teams, and organizations, as an executive, as a leader, as in their business, in terms of their career, the field is so wide that I don't think you can ever completely learn all the tools and toolkits. So what you're normally doing is maintaining this continuous learning frameworks and also expanding your toolkits, because what works for one person does not necessarily work for the other person. Right? So as a coach, you want enough tools in your toolkit, in your golf bag or whatever. So as the situation or as the course changes, you can pull another club out and have a different impact.
So was this your first career कि योभन्दा पहिला हजुर अरू कुरा पनि गर्नुभएको थियो?
So I've had banking experience, corporate banking. I've also had face-to-face marketing. This was like when I was studying in the US. Like my first full-time job was what I did was there used to be these Fortune 500 companies, and they would hire companies to get something to the market very quickly. So I'd visit houses, I'd visit businesses, and door-to-door selling. So I think it got me over the fear of rejection after doing that. And then but going through all of that, I always wanted to go to coaching. So like part of my mind was always on this though.
कुन point मा realize भयो कि I think this is the direction, this is the north
No,
star?
I knew this when I was doing my bachelor's degree.
Okay.
I already knew this. It's just that I needed to, at that point, the coaching profession itself had not evolved enough for it to become available. So as it starts to become more visible, then is when I gravitated towards it.
You as a business, as a career, you take more of a solo approach. Okay, this is something you can build into a business, employ more people, scale.
Generally, I think most coaches work as solopreneur, partly because it's very challenging trying to systematize it. The coaching skill set जुन छ नि is very different across coaches. So even if you were to work with 10 different coaches, they all will come from different schools, different backgrounds, different education levels. It's very difficult to commit to a client what the outcome would be. Like you cannot standardize it that easily. Maybe you'll be able to do it in 20 years, right? New profession bhavanale. It's not like like a law firm or accounting firm gareko jasto where everyone is studying the same course and everyone has the same idea and there's a constitution that everyone has clarity around. It's not that black and white. That's why it's very, very challenging trying to scale on this. You could probably scale with AI. Have an app. There are already apps out there. That's one way to scale. Other way to scale is you can always find a good number of coaches around the world, and once you get a client, you can pass it on to them. So you can divide the structure. That's there. Should somebody choose to use it. Some people do use it like that.
Do you practice that?
I don't that much. It's not like really something that excites me that much.
How fulfilling is this career in Nepal financially?
See, all careers are as fulfilling as the individual can make it financially also. So even accountants, there are accountants that make a lot of money, and there are accountants that don't make much money. Ditto with lawyers, ditto with any business you see it, right?
True.
There are teachers that make a lot of money.
True.
There are teachers that don't make money, and it's the same with coaching, right? So what happens with generally people that become coaches, they're interested in the coaching, but they're not interested in the business side of the business. Right? Or any other profession. So for that to work, I think a person has to be equally interested in the business side of things as they are interested in coaching for the financial side. To be interested, I'm a coach, I only want to coach, and don't tell me anything about business, then I don't want to manage business, then I don't think that works that well.
Nepalma, as a business owner, one of the challenges is to receivable उठाउन चाहिँ एकदम गाह्रो हो के नेपालमा हैन हजुरलाई चाहिँ कतिको गाह्रो हुन्छ
So generally that's not a problem in the coaching industry.
Do you charge upfront?
Generally, I mean, yeah, sometimes people pay upfront. I know coaches that take upfront for a whole year, but mine is generally it can be like 2-3 months upfront, or I'm okay if people pay after like a month also, and that's fine. I don't stress it too much. There's something in the agreement, but I don't worry about it too much. I've never had somebody not pay me though.
Okay, nice.
Interestingly, and that may be because coaching is a very close relationship.
You end up building a very, very like साथी जस्तो हुन्छ होला.
Yeah, I mean, so generally that may be one of the reasons why, so if you just send a text or something, people just pay up. I mean, it's not an issue. As opposed to, luckily, this is not one of those businesses where, I remember business class, my accounting teacher saying, receivables and stocks are the two snakes in your backyard. It looks like you have a lot on there in your balance sheet, but there's nothing there. Luckily, that's not true for, my practice so far.
अनि यो कन्टेक्स्टमा चाहिँ आई रिमेम्बर लास्ट टाइम हजुरले चाहिँ अ लट अफ माई क्लाइन्ट्स आर रिफर्ड क्लाइन्ट भन्नुभएको थियो होइन आर पिपल कम्फर्टेबल मतलब जस्तै फर इक्जाम्पल जसले कोच लिएको छ ऊ कम्फर्टेबल छ कि उसको आफ्नो नेटवर्कलाई चाहिँ मेबी ही सी क्यान
Yeah, not everyone is. You work through the people that are. And referral is not the only way to get clients. I mean, see, good coach or good marketer or good somebody salesperson in any business has to always be part of a lot of conversations, right? And when people start talking about their life, their business, all you ask is would you like some professional help with that? And if they do, then you have a client. Very simple, right? So the basic sales text of always be prospecting always applies for all businesses, whether it's a coach, whether it's a therapist, whether it's an accountant, whether it's a lawyer, or whether it's a digital marketer, right? So always be prospecting always applies. Once people talk about their problems, all you're asking is, would you like some professional help with that? The key is you need to be part of those conversations. And
ओके मैले मेरो एन्सर पाएँ मैले हजुरलाई अर्को क्वेसनमा जम्प गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ बिकज यु मेन्सन मार्केटिङ एन्ड डिजिटल मार्केटिङ यु फ्रम सेल्स ब्याकग्राउन्ड होइन यु हेभ डन यो बिजनेस एजुकेसन ब्याकग्राउन्ड हजुरको सो त्यो कन्टेक्स्टमा चाहिँ लास्ट मैले हजुरलाई एउटा क्वेसन के सोधेको थिएँ भन्दाखेरि खासै किन आफ्नो मार्केटिङ गरेर राख्नु भएको छैन त वाइ आर यु नट भेरी डिजिटली एक्टिभ होइन लिङ्कडिनमा पनि यु आर नट भेरी एक्टिभ सो त्यसको कारण चाहिँ के हो
Well, I mean, it's there for the taking, and I might actually do it, more of it also. So far, what has happened is I've used referrals and I've used personal interactions, and that generally has given me all the clients I want in the time that I've had. The digital marketing and the digital footprints, I think, become more important when you're trying to do get international clients. Right, and I might actually do more of that in the future. So just to diversify geographically, that may become more important. Also, internationally, also I've been getting referrals, so the issues I know. But I think just when you're trying to really expand into a certain geography that's not outside of where you are, I think that's where it becomes more important.
And हजुरको इन्डस्ट्रीमा त I think the idea of growing is becoming more premium, right? Because as a one solo guy, there is only so much of client you can take.
Right.
I know. So the idea is just becoming more and more and more and more premium.
Right. I mean, yeah. If you want to do that, I mean, sometimes people can have a very social altruistic framework, so they can sort of maintain different perspectives. But generally, yeah. There is this is a time trading thing to some extent. So you're looking to optimize your time.
यो हजुरले कोचिङ गर्न थाल्नुमा कति वर्ष भयो
अप्रोचिङ 8-9 years, almost decade हुँदैछ
almost decade 10 years हैन 10 yearsमा चाहिँ what is the growth of charging that has been जस्तै for example obviously year 1 मा चार्ज गरेको र year 11 मा चार्ज गरेको it's completely different.
See, year 1 is when I started off with my first client, it was free. Right? It was free, and when I sort of started doing it professionally, that same client was like, I got to pay you now. I can't be free now anymore because you're like sort of doing this full time. So first few clients of mine were free. I was experimenting with various ideas. But generally what I do have is, there is also, Nepal ma chahi त्यति clearly defined छैन, but at least in the developed countries, there is an industry and there is an industry rate.
Per hour type ko.
Some people bill it by the hour, some people bill it by outcome, right? It's like which perspective are you going to come across,
which is more profitable?
Yeah.
Which is more profitable?
Which is more profitable?
That's a question.
Yeah. No. See, it depends on the client. How much do they value an outcome? So if I say, if you were to achieve that, what is the price you would pay for that? I know. And generally people will tell you, it's also like a percentage of the income and net worth ko kura pani ho.
Nice.
I know. So for somebody that's earning a lot of money, like certain amount, it might sound high to other person, but for that person, it's relative. Okay? So whether somebody is expensive or not, it's always relative. I remember the Rich Dad Poor Dad book series, his uncle always used to tell him, that's not expensive. You're poor, once, right? It's always relative. But it's also based on the outcome. When people realize that, they could actually get something they want, then suddenly money becomes slightly less of an issue because people are spending money on a lot of things. You go out for a dinner once, it's like 5,000, 10,000 rupees is gone. So it's a question of what do you feel as being. People always have time, energy, resources for what they think is important.
True.
So the key is, I think, to be with people who think this is worth spending their time, money on. And it's not for everyone. And I will tell you that, right? Because there is action involved. There is, they have to start acting. They have to be serious about it. They have to be committed to it. And not everyone is. So like anything, there's nothing that is for everyone. So part of being a good coach is also finding the people who are actually willing to play the game.
I remember a quote from Osho. त्यहाँ चाहिँ एउटा के भनिएको छ भन्दाखेरि मेडिटेसन एन्ड पिस इज नट फर पुवर पिपल के
Right. Although, yeah, I mean, that's, one perspective, absolutely. I know. There are a lot of people who are like saints, by the way.
True.
I know.
True. मेरो अघिको फर्स्ट क्वेसन अफ द रेकर्ड एउटा फर्स्ट क्वेसन चाहिँ के थियो भन्दाखेरि वाइल कोचिङ अ लट अफ पिपल आई थिङ्क डिगिङ देयर लाइफ होइन फ्युचर पास्ट प्रेजेन्ट सबै कुराहरू वाट आर द चेन्जेस द्याट यु हेभ फिल विदिन आफूमा चाहिँ होइन किन भन्दाखेरि वाइल ट्राइङ टु चेन्ज समबडी एल्स अ लट अफ थिङ्स विदिन यु अल्सो गेट चेन्ज राइट सो त्यो आफ्नोमा सेल्फ रिफ्लेक्ट गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ हेज देयर बिन एनी गुड चेन्जेस द्याट यु हेभ फिल्ड आफूमा चाहिँ
So it's a two-part thing, right? First is there is what the client is trying to accomplish. There is your own personal goals. So what often happens is when I go to work, the way I've evolved is, I've always seen that I have to become more disciplined to accomplish my own personal goals. And, that added discipline all the time always shows up in how I interact with clients. So there is... who do I need to be able to coach this person in the optimal manner? And that's where a lot of my personal work goes into developing myself. I know. So there is that work. Because, generally it's tough to come into a coaching session as a coach if you're not evolving yourself. Because you're fundamentally asking people to evolve.
True.
I know. And so a lot of the hard work goes into that side of things. I know. So the personal change that you mentioned would be coming from that. Okay. And I think if you're setting lofty goals for yourself, there is a need to evolve.
Aggressive evolving.
I know. So evolving on the external side and afno bitroko evolution, you need both of them because either of those could cap you. It's like, I say it's 2 wings of a bird or 2 wheels of a bullet card. If your inner side and your outer side both are not, functioning optimally, then one of them will stop you.
True. One of जुन एउटा मेरो नेक्स्ट क्वेसन चाहिँ इट्स अराउन्ड लस होइन आई थिङ्क एभ्रिबडी गोज थ्रु अ लस अनि यु रिसेन्टली लस्ट यु ड्याड आई थिङ्क आई रिमेम्बर लास्ट टाइम when I approached you, you said I need let's catch up after certain time. I'm going through some hard times भन्नुभएको थियो.
Right.
एभ्री लस हरेक लसले चाहिँ केही न केही सिकाउँछ नि त होइन. I've lost my mom too होइन. त्यसले चाहिँ अब आई थिङ्क खतरा कुराहरू सिकाएको छ. आई थिङ्क फ्यु अफ माई बिगेस्ट लर्निङ आर फ्रम द लसेस द्याट आई हेभ ह्याड in a family. यो हजुरको I'm asking you because I asked you if you are comfortable.
Right. No, absolutely.
Just to give a context to our audience.
Right.
So as a coach, because I'm assuming कि as a coach you have to be a bit more self-aware than the normal people. होइन हुन त सेल्फ अवेरनेसको डिग्री छैन होइन. सो त्यो कन्टेक्स्टमा चाहिँ आफ्नो यो करियर प्रोसेसमा हुँदाखेरि चाहिँ हेज यो एट्रिब्युटले चाहिँ हजुरलाई यो लसबाट बाहिर आउन या यो लसलाई ह्यान्डल गर्नको लागि चाहिँ केही बेटर हेल्प गर्यो?
या एब्सोल्युटली. सो मेरो माई फ्रेमवर्क्स अराउन्ड डिजिज डाइङ एजिङ generally comes from the meditative traditionsहरूबाट आउँछ एज अ पर्सनल लेभल होइन. आई डु विपासना मेडिटेसनहरू गरेर आउँछु म. आई बिन डुइङ इट फर अ लङ टाइम. And the concept of impermanence is something that I actually, sort of keep it at the back of my mind. Things are fleeting. things are changing, and at some point you do have to accept that when it's time to move on, it's time to move on. होइन, especially like in मेरो dadको केसमा चाहिँ it was metastatic cancer, treatment गर्न नमिल्ने. He was already 84 years old. There was the thing that was there was that acceptance had to be there, and I think in a sense it was building up to that. So I think for me it was a good amount of acceptance. And I think the lesson from that is be careful about taking things for granted. होइन, so spending time with family members meaningfully. अब कस्तो हुन्छ नि, एउटा चाहिँ ठ्याक्कै at the time of death को wisdom हुन्छ, and there is a lasting wisdom. Sometimes after 2 weeks people forget all of that. होइन, the key is to make it last. And well, I think and the answer comes from the meditative traditions also, is every day to contemplate on the transitory nature of things. Death is just around the corner. होइन, things are fleeting. Obviously at the experiential level is why you sit down to meditate.
True.
होइन, so to experience that change inside, that things are happening, that the person I was sitting here to meditate 1 hour ago is already a different person in the 1 hour that or in the duration of this podcast, you and me have already become a different person.
True.
So change is always happening. होइन, is to wake up and go to bed with that contemplation all the time. And so with that framework, त्यो अलिकति टाटु भएर आएपछि दिमागमा चाहिँ is the idea is that creates more lasting behavior than if your lifestyle is set around where that kind of contemplation does not happen, or the practice itself does not exist.
त्यो डेली कन्टेम्प्लेसनले प्रेजेन्टबाट टाढा लैदिन्न, बिकज युआर अलवेज थिङ्किङ अबाउट, बिकज लाइक obviously life is fleeting, it's a fact. होइन, do we really need to get bothered or to stick with the idea that life is fleeting, life is fleeting, life is fleeting?
So you spend a certain amount of time for that. Then because if you don't do that, then all other things like death and all will be surprise for you, a big surprise and a big shock. I know. So that's the reality. So this is a question of how much can you disengage from reality, and I don't think you can. Obviously, the more engaged you are, the better off you are. Having said that, we do have our material goals to accomplish.
True.
So you dedicate certain times in the morning and evening to be engaged to that. During the day, you take out a notepad and what do I need to do today? In terms of like my other goals, and you do that. And then you sort of have a certain time to tune out and then engage again to that reality. So it's part of how you structure your 24 hours, whether it allows you to work hard, play hard, connect with the reality at the deeper level. And so, so it's your structure. Now, if part of your structure does not have that, then, you'll just forget about it.
Last time मैले हजुरलाई भेट्दाखेरि I remember I thought I'm meeting somebody who have done his PhD on body, medicine, food. हुन्छ नि, होइन, अनि I assume this comes from you trying to understand what is happening in your dad's body, how things are evolving, होइन.
Yeah.
And I love that. Okay? अनि that day when I was going home, I reflected on our conversation. अनि त्यो हजुरले 2-3 होमियोप्याथीको कुरा भएको थियो, होइन, एलोप्याथीको कुरा भएको थियो, अनि त्यो कन्भर्सेसन, अनि त्यो कन्टेक्स्टमा चाहिँ जान्न चाहे मतलब नसकिने कुरा त के रहेछ र, होइन. त्यो कन्टेक्स्टमा चाहिँ इज द्याट अ भेरी क्युरियस नेचर अफ योर्स कि आफ्नो वरिपरि जे भइरहेको छ, यु निड टु नो.
Absolutely. It turns out but even like a strength finder assessment which tells you your top strengths, मेरो चाहिँ top 5 मा चाहिँ learner रहेछ कि, होइन.
Top 5 मा I'm curious to know what's in top 4, 3, 2, 1.
And there are other things like being future, होइन, त्यो it's not a specific order मा चाहिँ, होइन, just generally top 5.
Okay.
There are other things like we mentioned earlier, developer, wanting to develop, take things that are like good, like better कसरी बनाउने, being future oriented and things like that, होइन. But my nature is that if I'm not learning, there's a sense that something is missing. So I would actually go out and seek and try and learn things. And I've done that for the last few decades. I've tried to read at least a book a week outside of my coursework, even when I was going through college, and I have generally maintained that.
Which is the book you are reading right now?
So I'm reading a book called, it's a parenting book about raising boys. It's called Raising Boys.
You have kids?
Yeah, I have a son that's 3.5 years, right? So it's about raising boys. How do you raise boys? how they're different from raising girls, and generally, like, what are the evolutionary phases that a parent keep in mind. So yeah.
Interesting.
Because and the reason I read a lot is I think, like, anytime somebody has experienced a particular problem, the first unique individual in the world to experience that problem, a lot of people have already experienced it. They've written about it. So it would be crazy to try and reinvent the wheel. Okay? So why not just get all the wisdom that's out there and then put it to practice?
Why not to use AI than to read books?
Yeah, right. Why not to use the
Why not to use AI
Right.
than to read books if it is about knowing a formula, knowing a pattern that somebody has already identified to implement?
Right. AI is an option. I mean, it's one of the options there, right? But there are a lot of other options. So generally, and one of the reasons I just like to read a hard book is, I just want to reduce my screen time, tech time, because I think there's too much of that already. Because part of coaching, quite a lot of work, I'm already on Zoom. And then, there's the normal screen time as it is. So whenever I get a chance to totally disconnect, I might take a book and just disconnect totally.
So you with all the AI thing happening around, no, हजुरको perception, हजुरको narrative चाहिँ के हो with around AI?
I think it's inevitable. I know it's pretty interesting. I think the key is to, like अब हामीले sci-fi movieहरू हेर्दाखेरि there's the possibility of it going all wrong also. I think that's the key. I mean, to what extent and for how long we can sort of keep it on the good side and manage, the dark side of AI, let's say, how do we manage it? But I think is the key. If you succeed at it, and then I think it's wonderful.
So I'm almost हाम्रो podcastको एन्डतिर आइसकेको छ. My last question to you is, so what's the North Star? Where are you heading?
So, I have my own personal goals, and, obviously is to pursue those that are there. But more importantly, I think, for me, I always think, like, what is the biggest game I could be playing? What is the biggest game that someone in front of me could be playing when I'm coaching them, right? And to basically... Now, we talk about North Star. Sometimes North Star is not a given. Like, we have to discover the North Star, right?
I think we have to discover
Right.
It's never given.
Right. And so often the work starts with helping people discover their North Star. And so then, then it's about achieving that. And, I think that's what I enjoy. And so just more of that.
Okay. Amazing. मजा आयो.
Great. Thank you.
So I think हाम्रो audience is very young, as the name suggests, the doers. The idea is to inspire and aspire people to act, get into behavior, do things, do it here in Nepal, see problems in forms of opportunity. So if you have to say some few last ending words to our audience, what would that be? Now the context is they are young, super young.
Right. So I think it's two-part. One is, I think, take the time to, discover what is it that you want to do, but do it at a quicker pace. Right? The other side I was going to say is there's a lot of distractions in our modern world. I know, whether it's all forms of TV, screen time, all kind of stuff. Being at a certain age, there is a certain amount of distraction that's unavoidable. But I think if you can sort of very quickly, whether it's through other resources or, mentors, whatever it is, people, books, whatever you need, getting the experience, being in the right project, the quicker you can finalize on what is it that you want to be doing for the rest of your life, the better off you'll be. And I would say, the quicker you can come to that, the better off. And I would say, try to focus on getting to that point far more quicker, because, I think the value that you can give to other people will be far greater, whether it's in the profit sector, non-profit sector, or whatever it is, as opposed to being in a job you don't like, being in a situation you don't like, being in a relationship you don't like, and just letting the whole thing drag on for a long period of time.
What is the best way to reach out to you? So a lot of people who are watching us right now, if they want to reach out, how should they?
So you can post my, LinkedIn comments and my email, etc. in the
description.
On the description itself, yeah, and they should be able to reach out.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. This is the first time
Right.
हामीले हजुरलाई लिएर आएको, so this is definitely not the last time. We'll be having you
Perfect.
again and again. For a lot of people watching, rewatch, tons of takeaways to take from. I know we'll be back again with another amazing doers. Do like and subscribe because YouTube Baba likes it. Only I think this conversation needs to reach out to a lot of people because we are trying to inspire people to to take some actions. So yeah, keep watching, keep listening, and be a doer. Bye bye.
Great. Thank you.